Welcome back, my favorite Python programmers, to a brand new video, and in this one we're going to be continuing our functions inventory system Python exercise. That was a long one, and we're going to be covering the following topics. This is a continuation of a previous video of a part 1 that we started because I felt that part was ballooning out of control, so I had to cut it in the middle and continue it right here. And I say that in that video, you can watch it somewhere around. Now you don't have to watch it. I'm going to provide all the code from that exercise in here so you can use it and continue fresh, but I do recommend that you watch it just so you have an idea of where we were and where we are going to. So if at any point you feel that you're enjoying the contents of this video, make sure to slap that like button because I need to beat any algorithm that's out there. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so as always, I'm going to give you the guide of the inventory system so you can do it on your own. If at any point you feel that you're stuck or you don't know, you can always go to where I finished that particular part of the guide or of the system, and then you can continue on from there. But the most important thing is that you try to do it on your own as well. So first of all, you'll need to create a new Python file called BasicInventorySystem and copy all the code from exercise 6 into this one. Now, onto this one. Create another Python file for exercise 7 and import the BasicInventorySystem as the inventory system. If you don't know how to import, again, I recommend that you go and search for it. Very important thing to know about Python. Next, you're going to create a new variable that is the inventory and set it as the inventory from the inventory system. Remember, the basic inventory system that has the code from exercise 6 is imported as inventory system. So you'll need to get the inventory from there and set it in the inventory right here. Next, you'll need to create a new function that is going to be generate restock orders that checks all the items that are under the minimum stock. And for such items, orders a quantity that will double the minimum. So you need to get the minimum, double it, and then order an amount that will make sure that the final amount will be double that of the minimum. It simply returns a dictionary. Oh, by the way, it does not modify the inventory in itself. It simply returns a dictionary with keys being items and name, item name, and values the amount that you order. So this generates a restock order. It does not actually restock your inventory. Then you'll need to create a function apply restock orders that takes in a restock order dictionary that is generated right here and actually modifies that inventory. And then finally, you'll need to create a function that writes the inventory into a JSON file with the proper indentation. If you don't know how any of these works, if you don't know how files work or functions work, and you don't know how to read and write to JSON files, then I'm going to link all the videos somewhere at the top. You can go watch them. So go ahead, pause the video, and try to go through the program guide. Okay, so as you can see right here, what I did is I created a new Python file that is the basic inventory system. And what I did is I copied everything from exercise 6 into this basic inventory system. The reason I did this is because when I have a file that is exercise space 6 space dash space function space inventory, you know what I mean. When I have spaces, I cannot import it. It will now not allow me. So now when I try to import, for example, if I try to import exercise 6, it just does not work. So instead what I did is I created the basic. So now I can import the basic inventory system if it allows me. For some reason, it's just stuck. Oh, there we go. So import, now I have the option to hit tab to select the basic inventory system. If I try to get exercise, it will not work. Only the basic inventory system as inventory system. And there we go. Now we have access to it. And inventory, it seems that I've written something incorrectly. There we go. Inventory system. So in this line of code, we're importing a module that we created named the basic inventory system and giving it an alias that is inventory system for us to use throughout the program. This means that instead of having to use the full name basic inventory system every single time we want to access a certain function or a certain variable from it, we can simply use the shorter and more concise name of inventory system. So again, now instead of having to copy all this code and put it in exercise 7, so now we have, right here we have over almost 100 lines of code. If we copy it and put it all in exercise 7 and then start adding functions to it, it's just going to clutter our code and it's going to make it harder for us to go through it and diagnose it and just search for certain function. Instead, now what we can do is we simply import the basic inventory system and we can use everything that's inside. But keep in mind, now if I right click and I run, and notice I'm running exercise number 7, I'm going to close the projects over here because I just wanted to show you how the inventory system is created. I'm going to close it down. I'm going to close exercise number 6. I'm just going to keep these two open. And notice when I ran exercise number 7, I got a certain output. Now we don't want that. This happens because when I imported exercise or imported the basic inventory system, you'll see that I imported the inventory, I imported the functions like the search, the list, the remove, etc. But I also imported these lines of code right here that actually do something. So we run every single line. So I'm going to select all of these and hit Control // on a Windows. On a Mac, it might be different. I'm not entirely sure, but you can search or Google it just to find out how you can copy comment out multiple lines in PyCharm or IntelliJ or in the IDE that you're using. So now when I comment these lines out, these lines that test out the functions, when I right click and I run right here, you can see that I don't get any output, but I can access for files and variables from the basic inventory system. Okay, so in this line of code, we are accessing the inventory attribute or object from the inventory system module that we previously imported and assigned that inventory to the inventory variable, local inventory variable. Essentially, this makes the inventory from the inventory system, that is the basic inventory system right here, which is this inventory, now accessible in our current script. And I can close this down because now we have this inventory, and let's go ahead and print it out just so we can see what's actually inside. Right click and run, and you can see that we have apples with a certain quantity, certain minimum stock. This is a dictionary where we have the apples as the keys and the values of each key, another dictionary that contains the quantity and the minimum stock. Okay, so in here we define a function named generate restock orders that does not take any parameters but works on our dictionary and returns a dictionary as well. So inside, as you can see, I've just added some code or some lines or some strings to describe what this function actually does. And as you can see, it returns a dictionary. Inside, what we did is we first created the restock orders dictionary. This dictionary is going to store all the items and their quantities that we need to order later on. Next, for each item in the inventory right here, using this for loop, we check if the quantity of that item is less than the quantity or the minimum stock required. Now remember, the .items accesses or returns two things. It returns first item, it returns the key, and then it returns the value. But remember, the value in here is a dictionary in of itself. So we access the quantity key and we check if that key is less than the minimum stock. And if it is, then we create the order quantity in here that is going to be equal to the minimum stock multiplied by 2, and then we remove the quantity that's already there. Remember, I told you whenever we want to restock something, the eventual calculation or the eventual stock that we should have should be double that of the minimum stock. Now, if you didn't do that, maybe it wasn't 100% clear, that's okay, don't worry about it. But as long as you were able to get to this line, make these checks and go through each and every item. After we do that, we use the item that we got, which is the key from the inventory system. We use it as another key for the restock orders dictionary in here, and we set the value at that key to the order quantity that we calculated right here. And finally, we print out a statement saying that this is the item that we restocked, and this is the amount that we restocked it with. So let's go ahead and test this one out. So I'm simply going to say that the orders are equal to generate restock orders. If I right click and I run, I don't get anything printed out. Why? Because I don't think there's anything to actually restock. So what I'm going to do is Alright, so in here what we did is I used the inventory system module and I called the function add item, and then I added an apple and I added a quantity of 20 with a minimum stock of 10, cherries with a quantity of 40 and a minimum stock of 60. So this should appear whenever we generate a restock order, and I did the same for pineapples. As you can see, the minimum order is 30. And if you're thinking, okay, what is this function in the first place? Again, I told you that you should watch the previous video, part 1. If you haven't, if we hold down Control, you can see that we can use these as links. And if in any case, I can simply hover over this, as you can see right here, and boom, there we go. Name, quantity, and the minimum order. But if you actually want to go to that script, you can click on that and boom, it takes you to the add item in the basic inventory system. How cool is that? Anyway, as you can see right here, we also have the basic information that we wrote about that function. Right click and run, and boom, 20 apples were added. The total is 70. Cherries added to the inventory, now 40, 10. And then when we called upon the restock order, we said that cherries and the order quantity should be 80. Now the minimum is 60 and we already had 40, so we need to have a total of 120. But if we order 120 and we remove 40 from it, that is where the 18 number came. So everything is working perfectly fine. But there is one more thing that we can actually do in here, and that is, instead of putting this into a variable, I could actually print out the generate restock order. So now if I right click and I run, you can see that I have this output in here as well. This is the actual dictionary. So this is a function that prints something out, something that we've seen before, and it returns a value. How about that? I think this is the first time that we see, especially in this exercise of the inventory system, that we see a function that does both. Okay, so as you can see in here, we create or we define a new function that is the apply restock orders, that takes in a single parameter that is the restock order, and it should be of type dictionary, and then the function returns nothing. Now, inside of the function, what we do is we iterate through each item in the restock orders, and we do the same thing that we've done in here by applying the dot items. What does that mean? It means it returns again a key and a value, and that value comes from here. So what was the value in here? Remember, first we have the item and then the order quantity, so that is an integer. First thing that we do is we check if the item is actually in the inventory. That is the first step. So if the item is found, then the function adds the order quantity from the restock order to the item's current quantity in the inventory. So if the item is already there, it means that we should get that quantity and increment it. This is the plus equals, that is the increment. I've already explained this many times, and we increment it by the order quantity. The order that was here, remember, it was an integer from this function. Very important. Once we increment that, we simply print out that we've applied a restock to that item and its new quantity is the following. After we finish that, I wrote these two lines of code right here. So in here, I should have orders, that is the generate restock orders. Make sure you don't forget these. And notice I have a print just to separate from other lines, apply restock orders, but we have an error. Why? Because this needs to have some kind of dictionary. That is the orders that we've already created right here. And then we also separate this where we print out the list of inventory so we can see all the new items. So when I right click and I run, you can see right here that first of all, we had a restock of cherries, and then we had a restock of pineapples, and in here we actually applied it to the cherries, so now we have a total of 120, and we applied it to the pineapples, so we have a total of 60. Those are the double of the minimum stock that we talked about. And when we print out the list's inventory, we can see that we have 70 apples, just like we had right here, and the minimum stock is 10, cherries 120, pineapples 60, so everything works just fine. Okay, so as you can see right here, I created a new function that is the save inventory to file. Before we continue on, something that I did was create a new directory in here. So when I right click, new, you can see that I create a directory, which is just a file, but in the context of a Python project, we call it the directory, and I called it specifically exercise 7-inventory-system files. Notice that it's the same name right here, and make sure that this directory is in the exact same directory. Remember, we have code, and that directory contains all of the exercise files, including exercise number 7 and including this directory. So keep that in mind when you're creating the directory. Don't create it on the outside, otherwise this will not work. So in here we defined the function and we defined an optional path. So remember, we could have specified a path, but we created an optional one. This is a default value. We've already covered that a lot. Now in here I should add an R. Why? Because we need it as a literal, because this is a string. So we need to make sure that it's raw. This R star stands for raw. Whenever you're trying to write a link as a string, or you want a directory file as a string, you need to add the R behind it to make sure that this backslash is not interpreted as a special character starter. If you don't know what all of that is, again, you should watch the variables video that I created, and the reading and writing file video I also mentioned before, or maybe I'm gonna mention it somewhere right here. Now this function begins by opening the file specified by the file path. So this is the file path that we received, and we open it and we use the write mode because we're using the W in here. Then we use json.dump method inside that allows us to write all of the contents of the inventory dictionary to that file, formatting the JSON data with an indentation of 4 spaces for readability. And I'm going to show you what happens if we remove this indentation. This is very important. If you didn't use that, don't worry about it. That's not a big problem. It's a little bit more advanced. So effectively, what this does is it serializes all the information that's inside of the inventory dictionary into the JSON formatted strings and saves it to the file. After we've done that, we just print out a simple inventory save to the file. So right here, again, I'm going to print out a simple print just to separate things, and I'm going to, where is it? Save to inventory file. So save inventory file, the path is already there, and notice right now inside of the exercise we don't have anything, but when I right click and I run, boom, everything is good. You'll notice I have a new chevron. Is that a chevron? I'm not sure. Inventory right here. As you can see, boom, 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 inventory saved to a file. So I'm going to close this down, open up the inventory, and boom, look at that. All of the inventory that we've created is now saved in a .json file. We are professionals. Now let me show you what would happen if I remove these indentations. So if I remove this, right click and run again, and if I open up the inventory file, notice how they are printed out. Not very nice. It doesn't, or at least it's not as good as the one that we saw before. Now, I recommend that you play around with these indentations. Maybe 3 is enough, maybe 2 is enough for you to make sure that it looks beautiful, but I found that 4 is the best. Right click and run, and you can see that our inventory looks very, very nice. Okay, fellow Python programmers, congratulations on making it this far. That was a big one. We've covered a lot. We are in the advanced territory when it comes to creating functions, when it comes to working around dictionaries, and of course when creating JSON files. Now it's time for you to test out your knowledge with a bit of a challenge. And remember, the goal is not to do every single step in the challenge properly. It's to try your best and apply the knowledge that you've learned and that you know, and you can always come back and watch the video with me, and you can always leave questions in the comments below. But anyway, let's go ahead and look at the challenge. Okay, so as you can see right here, you need to remove and analyze the inventory. First, you'll need to create a new JSON file that is the advanced inventory. So remember, you need to create a JSON file. And what was the type of JSON file? It was .json. So you'll need to create an advanced inventory that is JSON file in the exercise 7 directory. Remember, the new directory that we created, and add all of the information I provided you. Analyze how that data is structured. So remember, JSON files are very similar to dictionaries, and I provided you with some data either in the description or the pinned comment. Copy that, put it in a .json file that you create yourself, and then analyze how that data is structured. So what are the keys? What are the values? Is there something deeper in there? Are there embedded dictionaries inside of these values? All of these things you need to figure out. Create a function load inventory from file that takes an optional file path. Again, remember, optional. File path, open up the file and loads, or opens up the file and loads all the data into a global inventory variable. Then you'll need to use the try except blocks to avoid any file not found errors. Global variables are something that I still did not explain in any of my videos, but it's something that's very crucial, and I found that this is the perfect opportunity to teach you that. So I don't have any videos to link you to that, but again, you can search for that. That is the beauty. This is the power. This is where you have to be on your own and find out how you can work on a global variable. It's super simple. Don't overcomplicate it. A quick Google search. You can even ask ChatGPT, but don't ask it too much. Don't ask GPT for too much info, because it can just do everything for you, and that's not the point of all of this. And finally, the try except block. This is something that I explained again in the reading and writing of the file video that I linked somewhere around. Create a function inventory report that takes inventory dictionaries and for each category prints out how many items there are, their name, and the item quantities, and the minimum stock. So this is just a report of said inventory. And remember, you'll have to use the advanced inventory that I provided you. So again, this is working around the data that you've imported. Create a function supplier contact list that takes the inventory dictionary that and then prints out a list of suppliers with their contact information and their given inventory. So each supplier should only be shown once. So you'll see once you analyze the data from the advanced inventory that I provided you with, that there is something called a supplier, and some items have the same supplier. So you need to make sure that a single supplier is not printed out twice. Very important. Finally, create a function that is the cost and value analysis that takes the inventory dictionary. This function prints out the total cost and the potential revenue. Assume that each item can be sold for a 50% markup over its cost. I apologize for all the small mistakes that I did in here. As I was writing these, I was more focused on the actual content instead of making sure that every single English word makes, or grammatical. I apologize for that. That take inventory dictionary, takes. Sorry for that. But anyways, I hope you get all the points. It's not easy. All of these are actually, I think, in my opinion, kind of hard. If you're a beginner, it's very hard, but stick with it. Try your best. As you're watching, if you find yourself very stuck, watch my video to that point and then come back and try to continue from there. Do your absolute best. Pause the video right now and go do the challenge. Alright, so in here I'm going to right click on the directory that I created and create a new file, and that file is going to be the advanced inventory.json, and I made sure to make it .json. And by the way, we can have spaces because this is not something that we're importing. This is a file that we're opening, so I can have a space, but the most important is .json, so that it's a .json file. How did I know it's a JSON file? Because it has the same symbol for the inventory JSON file, which are these two brackets. Then I'm going to paste the information that I provided you with, which is this sort of more advanced dictionary. So let's take a look at what we have in here. So first thing you'll notice is that we have this key, right? This is where the first key starts. So it is fruits. And then the value is a list. How did I know it's a list? Because I have the square bracket. And if you're using PyCharm, you can see that this is the entire list and it stops here. And then we have vegetables. And then it has this list which ends right here. So let's go back to the fruits and let's understand what we have inside. So the key is fruits, just a string, normal string. Its value is going to be a list, and inside the actual items of, or each element of those, or of that list, is going to be a dictionary. How did we know it's a dictionary? Because it opens up with the squiggly line or squiggly bracket. And inside of this dictionary, we have key value pairs. So we have the name, Apple, supplier, its value is another dictionary, and then inside we have name and the contact, which are the name of the supplier and then the email of said supplier. Then we have price, quantity, minimum stock, and it seems that it is the same for everything else. Then we have vegetables. Again, the vegetables has value of list, so the list is its value, and inside of that list we have two dictionaries, and each dictionary contains key value pairs, name, supplier, price, quantity, and the minimum stock. And they seem to be exactly the same. There's no difference. Excellent. So again, let me take you through this. This is dictionaries inside of lists, inside of dictionaries. Kind of complicated. Seems like very complicated, but once you understand and you diagnose how everything works, it is pretty simple. So we have a dictionary. We start off from the very top. Dictionary, key, value, that is a list. Each item is another dictionary, and each dictionary inside contains key value pairs. You have to understand this diagnosis of the data that you receive in order to properly go through it. Okay, so in this function that is the load inventory from a file, we use the optional parameter file path to specify the location of the inventory data, and by default it's going to be, of course, the exercise 7 file advancedinventory.json. We start by attempting to open the file in the read mode. Why did I say attempting? Because we use the try except block, and this is very important when you're working with opening and closing files, because if there's an error you can corrupt the data that's in the file and just destroy everything. And in here, starting. Then after we attempt, inside of the try block we open the file with the open method, and we open it in the read mode because we use the R, and then we have the file. Now inside of this with, we define or we declare inventory as global. This will allow us to modify the global variable within this function. So inventory right here is a global variable, right? And we cannot access it. There's no way for us to access it. If I remove this, we don't know which inventory we're talking about. We're creating a new variable within the function. But when I declare inventory as global and I write the global statement right here, so the global statement is a declaration which holds for the entire current code block. It means blah, 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 blah. You can read all about it, but basically what it does is it says inventory is global, which means I'm actually changing the inventory that I've declared right here. This inventory belongs to all of my functions, and when I say global inventory, it means I'm modifying it globally for all other functions. Now this is not something that's very good, especially when you're working with tons and tons of functions and you have a lot to work with, but for now it's a temporary solution. And then we load all the data from the file, from the advanced, into that inventory that we have, and finally we print out that the file was loaded. Now if we don't find that file, we start off with a empty inventory, and we set it to just be nothing because we want to make sure that this does not cause errors down the line, because we are going to be trying to access values from it, and if we don't have anything at all, we're just going to get into errors. So this is the function that we have. Let's go ahead and test it out. So right here at the bottom, even though I have to get rid of everything from the top, but I just wanted to show you, if I load the inventory files and I print out the inventory, so notice I didn't return anything from this. This is the power of using the global inventory. Instead of returning and setting it to the inventory, I simply adjusted the global variable inventory. So right here, print out the inventory, right click and run, and boom, there we go. This is my inventory. Of course, it looks extremely ugly, but with time we are going to be able to access things from it. And also, since we are not going to be using any of these anymore, I'm going to comment them out. So select all of these, hit Ctrl/, select these two lines, hold down Shift Alt and use the arrow keys to move them to the top. So now we are working on our advanced function only, or our advanced inventory only. One more thing, if I change this or I just remove an I, this is a good example of, you can see that there is no error. So we try to open a file that does not exist, but instead of getting an error, we simply get a warning message, and we start off with a simple inventory. So just to show you why the try except block is very, very useful. Okay, so in here we define a function named the inventory report that takes in a single parameter, that is the inventory, which in itself is a dictionary. And this function does not return anything, that's why we have the none right here. Initially, what we do is we print out just a heading that says this is an inventory report. That signifies that we're starting with a report. I'm also going to add a \t in here just to add a bit of indentation. This is a special character, something that I described or explained in the variables video. Now, what we do is we start off by iterating through this inventory dictionary, and we use the dot items as we've done many times before. This again goes through every single key and value. Now the keys we set as categories. Why? Because in the advanced inventory we have fruits and we have vegetables, which I called categories. You can call it whatever you want. And then inside we have the lists. So the items right here, remember, are lists. What I do is, first of all, I print out the category and I print out the total items. So how many items I have. So remember, right here I have a list, and for example in here I have 3 dictionaries inside of that list, which means that I have 3 total items. So the length of the fruits category is going to be equal to 3. Correct? And then I access each item inside of these items, and then remember, what is this? What should be its type? It should be a dictionary, because each item in that list is a dictionary. So I access that dictionary and I access name, quantity, and the minimum stock of said dictionary. Finally, let's go ahead and call this. So I print out the entire inventory right here. This is just for testing. We don't need it, but I just want to do it anyway. And keep in mind, you do have to load the inventory before you have the inventory report. And then I'm going to have the inventory report, and I'm simply going to use the inventory, right click and run, and boom, this is the inventory report. How cool is that? First we have the category, which is fruits, and the total item is 3. Inside we have apples, bananas, and peach, and then a second category that is the vegetables, and we have 2 items, carrots and broccoli, with their quantities and minimum stocks. Holy moly, let's look at this big function. This is one of the most complicated, I would say, but it is also the most thorough way that we were able to go through a dictionary. So because we're accessing a dictionary, and then we're accessing a list, and then we're accessing a dictionary, and then we're creating a dictionary from all of that. So let's dive in. First of all, I made a mistake in here. This is inventory. This should be an inventory. Excellent. So now we have everything looking good. First of all, what we did is we defined the function that takes in the inventory that is a dictionary, and it returns nothing. Next, we print out that we simply want to supply, or this is the supplier context list. We create a new dictionary that is the supplier, where we just initialize it. This dictionary will store the unique supplier names as keys and their information. This ensures that we own, or each supplier is only printed out once, because as I told you, we don't want multiple suppliers to be printed out. We then iterate over the inventory's dictionary with a nested loop. The outer loop accesses each category and its items, while the inner loop processes the individual items within that category. So this is why we're using 2 loops, or nested loops. And if you don't know how loops work, or you don't know how nested loops work, I'm going to reference the loops video somewhere around. For each of them, we then extract the supplier's name and contact information using the supplier key right here that we have, which in itself is a dictionary that contains the name and contact. So as you can see right here, each item is a list, and then we check if that, if this is the item, then we have each item, and each item is, once we access the supplier, it's a dictionary right here, supplier, because we're working on a dictionary. Then we get another dictionary, so we have to use the name again right here to access the name, which is, for example, orchard, I don't know. And then what we do is we check if the supplier name is not in the suppliers that we have right here. Then we append the dictionary suppliers with the supplier name, and we set it to the item supplier, and we have the contact. This is going to be the value of each new item that's added to the supplier dictionary. Whoa! Before I redo that, before I re-explain it, Finally, this should be the easiest step. We again go through the suppliers dictionary that we have right here, which contains the name and the contact, and we print them out. I'm just going to test it out just to make sure that everything works fine. And once we do that, I'm also going to re-explain it because it's a big one. So right here, inventory, right click and run. And this is the supplier contact list. You can see that each one is only mentioned once, even though we have 3 plus 2, we have 5. And I don't think we had overlapping anyways. Yep, we didn't have any overlap. Anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy it. This is a mistake on my part. Let's paste it right here. And I'm going to redo this, so right click and run, and as you can see we only have 4. Excellent. So we don't print out that we don't print out the tropical fruits twice, we only print it out once because there is overlap. We have 5 items, we have 4 suppliers. Quite an interesting oversight. So before we move on, let's go through this again. So we get the inventory. That inventory is a dictionary. So we access the category and the items. The items, again, right here. Let me maybe put it up right here on the right hand side. Maybe that would make it slightly easier. So again, category, items, category. Each items is a list. So we go through every single item in that list. So this item, what is it? It's this, and then it's this, and then it's this as well. So each item is a dictionary. So we access the supplier's name using item, supplier, the key right here, supplier, and it's a dictionary in itself. So then we access the name. So now we have the supplier name. And because we only want to print out each supplier once, we check if that supplier name is in the suppliers already. If it's not, so if not in suppliers, then we create a new item inside with the supplier name as the key, and then we set the value to the item supplier contact. So this is still on the same item, and that is how we print these out. I hope that was as thorough as possible, but we have to move on to the last function. Okay, so as you can see right here, we define a new function in here that is the cost and value analysis. And this function does not return any value. That's why we have none, and it takes in the inventory dictionary. And of course, upon calling the function, we create 2 variables in here, or we initialize 2 variables in here to 0, which are the total cost and the potential revenue, because we want to go through every single item and accumulate the total cost and accumulate the total potential revenue from selling certain items. So the function then iterates over each category in the inventory using a for loop, using the .items. We've seen this so many times, especially in this video. I'm not going to go over it, and I access every single item in the items. Why? Because again, as we've seen before in the advanced dictionary, each value of each category is going to be a list. So we access each one in the list, and item is a dictionary in itself. So then we access, or we want to set the cost. So we access the quantity of each item and we multiply it by the price of said item. So now we have the cost, and then as I told you, the markup for each or for selling each item is going to be 50%. So we have to multiply that cost by 1.5. So we calculate the total cost, we calculate the total revenue of each of those items, and then we print it out. And I don't think there's anything too complicated, especially if you were able to understand this one. The cost and value analysis is much simpler. So once we have all of this, we simply print it out, and I called it right here. So I right click and I run, And boom, there we go. The total cost is 255 and the potential revenue is 382. And you might be wondering also why I have the .2f. This is to indicate to Python that I only want the last two, or I only want 2 digits after the floating point. If I remove this, I might potentially have... Okay, so in this example, I don't have anything, but sometimes I might get 17 numbers after the floating point. That's why I indicated that I wanted .2. So there we go. This is the cost and value analysis. Okay, fellow Python programmers, I'm at the 1 hour and 5 minutes mark, and I'm so tired, but I'm so glad that we went through this. If you understood everything in this video, and especially if you understood the supplier contact list, you have unmatched skill in going through dictionaries. You have unmatched skills, or you have a big arsenal in your ability to create functions with parameters and arguments and return values and printing, and oh my god, you have so much info. And now you're also a master of working with directory files, with .json files, and going through data. So if you were able to go through this video and understand, I'm gonna say 60, maybe 70% of it, you are good to go. You are doing incredibly well. I'm tired. I don't know what we have next, but it's probably going to be in this video. Let me move the microphone. You have to click on this video. Make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, and continue your Python programming journey with this exercise right here. Let's go. Yes, let's